Hey everyone, welcome back to the Improv TX Comedy Network. If this is your first time checking out the podcast network, we appreciate it. Please head over to your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, or iTunes, and give the Improv TX Comedy Network a like. And just a reminder, the Improv TX Comedy Network is live on YouTube with all your favorite comedians on the improv stage. All links can be found in the description. And with that, on to the podcast. All right, everyone, welcome to The Act Out. From open mic to the big stage, comedians tell us the story they've made. Today, on our first inaugural, I think that's the right word, episode.
Inaugural, yeah.
Yes, we have the amazing, the spectacular, the awesome Dan Danzy. Dan, how are you, sir?
Thank you for your kind words. I'm doing good. I'm doing really, really good. I got over COVID recently. Everything's getting back into play, and I'm doing just all these numerous things that I'm doing.
And you were kind of staying locked up during this time, right? Because you have asthma, correct?
Yeah, I was. I didn't have it for 2 years. In fact, it got to the point where I thought I was asymptomatic. And then
never do that.
I know. And then, I heard about the variant, but I was just like, and a little bit after my 35th birthday, I woke up with congestion and achy bones. And I'm like, I do not get this sick during the summer. This has to be it. And it ended up being it.
It's horrible, but I'm happy to see that you are on the rebound. Y'all, you need to know about Dan. He's a stand-up comic, Twitch streamer, podcast host, all-around content creator, host of the Counting Lights podcast,
and contributor to timelessgamer.net video game publication. I got to start throwing that in there now. So,
absolutely.
But that's been a joy.
And you're going to be doing articles for them?
Write-ups on video games and opinion articles. On August 10th, in 4 days, my write-up on Miles Morales Spider-Man comes out. And these write-ups are just for people who haven't played the game. It's like I'm just talking people into trying out games that I've played and that I like, basically.
Right on, dude. And it's totally up your alley. We'll get into the Twitch streaming a little bit towards the end. But let's start from the beginning, where it all begins. When were you born? How old are you?
How dare you? No, I'm 35. I was born 1987. I was born in Arlington, raised,
really?
Yeah, but raised a little bit in Chicago, but mostly Houston, Texas.
Right on. So you're down in Houston. Was it close to Houston, or were you in Beaumont at the time?
No. Okay, so I was in Spring, which is like below the Woodlands, and I was there for a good like 13 or 14 years of my life, and then I moved to Beaumont. And there's a reason I moved to Beaumont. I didn't do it willingly, but it all goes in with how I started comedy. Really, I moved to Beaumont because my mom had passed away. My dad and I were just wrecks. I suffered silently while he was more. God. Ooh.
So yeah, I can't imagine, dude.
Yes. So we moved in with my grandparents in Beaumont, and like I had a bedroom, but with my dad, they had to make the garage into a bedroom. It was big enough to put a couch and recliner bed in there. And I had a bedroom, but I didn't sleep in it. I slept on my dad's couch. He slept in his bed, and we just put on the TV the whole night. And Sorry. I haven't thought of it.
Man.
I mean, it was, and we were poor. We had nothing. We relied on my grandparents heavily because we were just wrecks for a good 2 years. Well, no, for a lot longer. I just thought I was over it, and it turned out I was getting survivor's remorse, which led to the drinking problem, and my dad, same way, But stand-up comedy is kind of what got me out of that.
And let's talk about that. Age of 13, you came upon a comedian known as Bill Hicks. Is that correct?
Yes. I did. I had watched stand-up a lot before Bill Hicks. My parents had, I think it was HBO Comedy. It was when HBO split up into several HBOs, when there was like 8 HBOs. And I remember like the only time my family ever really got along was when HBO Comedy was on. And I would watch Dana Gould, Paula Poundstone, early Dave Chappelle, and just all these funny comedians. But Bill Hicks was the first comic that I listened to that it was different. It was, oh, this guy's pissed off at what's going on. Everyone else loves what's going on, but this guy's pissed, but he's making people laugh at what he's pissed at. They're not like walking out. I mean, he'd get hecklers. He's a comic. Every comic gets hecklers, but it was just so innovative to me. It wasn't comedy I heard before, but my real influence was Johnny Carson.
Oh, really?
Yeah. My dad had old tapes of Johnny Carson. And I was absolutely like his delivery and his timing and the fact that he wasn't a comedian. He started out as a magician. He had appreciation for the art form, and I respected that. And when he bombed, when a joke bombed, had the best recoveries to this day. But the cynical side of things, I loved Bill Hicks. I just absolutely adored him.
So do you find that your comedy in the beginning, did it kind of channel both Johnny Carson and Bill Hicks, or how did that work?
Every open micer that listened to Bill Hicks goes up on stage and tries to be Bill Hicks.
Absolutely.
And I was very guilty of that. But yeah, and that's what I did at 18. I didn't have a voice. Like, what was I thinking? Like,
what were you even thinking at 18? I don't even think I had a thought in my brain at 18, let alone the ability to go on stage at 18.
Honestly, and I think this went with the like 9 other comics in Beaumont, Texas. We were just really just trying to get out. You know what I mean? We were just trying to get out of Beaumont. We were a bunch of misfits that didn't fit in with the town. And we saw this comedy thing as a way to get out. And man, I wish I could go back to those times. They were fun, and a lot of it was bad because I would pick up drinking very early into my comedy career, but I kept it secret because, one, I didn't want people to throw my mom back into my face like, oh, this is what your mom died of. And two, I didn't want, like, I would show up to Comedy Texas where I started. I would show up to open mics or the weekends with just like 2 shots before I went in. And I didn't tell anybody at the club because I didn't want to be thrown out. In my 18-year-old head, I thought they would throw me out. I might have told the door guy, B-Ham, he was the owner's brother, because he was a rapper. He was cool. I think he was like, hey, bro, you all right? I was like, I'm a little bit drunk right now, B-Ham. He's like, word, I won't say.
It's that drug thing where you have to say something to somebody. You're like, oh man, I'm just a little bit too high. Did you really need to share that? Oh, but I am. So you started 2006 in Beaumont, Texas.
I did.
You were 18, like you said. My God, what was it like the first time you went on stage? Did you prepare, or were you just like, I'm going to go up here? Did it take the 2 shots to build up the courage? What was it?
No,
like?
See, I wasn't drinking then. It was like when I gained a little bit of confidence, about 3 or 4 months in is when I started like taking shots every day. But my first time up, I really wasn't nervous. I just wanted to get it over with. And that's kind of how I am now. Like, to me, when a show starts, especially now that I feature in headline places, like now it's like time slows down and I just want to get it over with. And so my first time, like, I can't repeat my jokes from the first time. I was a very dark, you gotta remember what place I'm in.
Right.
Like, my dad and I did not go to therapy. So like I'm grieving, and dark humor is where, like, I'm a little bit dark. I meet the line right now, you know. That's taken time. In the beginning, there was no line to me. So my first 2 jokes in, I can't repeat them, else today's day and age, I'll get in trouble.
Yeah.
But at the time, nobody had a problem with it. And I didn't kill, or I didn't do well, but I didn't do as badly as I thought I was going to do. And that just kind of kept me in it. That was just like, yeah, I can do this. I remember the owner of the club, who is a comic named Slade Ham, really funny comic. He said, you look like you belong on the stage, but what was coming out of your mouth is not acceptable. So yeah, I was like, well, as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, so all I have to do is just write a little bit better. Okay, that's not hard. I was actually more nervous my first opening weekend, to the point that I threw up right after my first show, like right after my first opening spot. That was the most nerve-wracked I've ever been.
And what did it feel like? What was it? Was it like going on a roller coaster, or was it like it's a whole new feeling?
It was a whole new feeling. I'd never been that nervous before. When I got up on stage, I was fine, but everything before, like, I got a stomach ache and I was sweating, and there was like part of me that just wanted to run out of the club and just go home. But I was just like, you know what? No one's going to beat you up. You've gotten better at writing. If the owner of the club, who's an established comedian, has trust in you to open, just get on with it. And like, my headliner was like someone I actually like remembered and knew. It was Marty Rackham. He was on Seinfeld. He played Elaine's boyfriend with the glasses that she wanted. So I automatically knew who he was. So I was a little bit nervous on what he'd think. And everything like that. But ever since then, I've never had that feeling ever again. I don't want it because it made my night hell. It really did.
It sounds like you kind of did what is called flooding. Whenever, like, if you're afraid of spiders, you jump in a pit full of spiders and you'll never be afraid of spiders again. Sounds like you kind of purged yourself by being so nervous and anxious. Do you still get the adrenaline rush after you come off stage? Is that still a thing for you? Okay.
So it's anxiety. The anxiety builds up before a show, and then I go up there and I just kind of hone it, and I just kind of work off that, and then the adrenaline's going. So it's kind of lowering the anxiety down. But usually when I get off stage, I have enough adrenaline to shake hands and be nice. But when I get home, I just crash.
Yeah.
I just crash. That's I don't stay up. Like, that's the only time I have a good night's sleep is after a show.
Do you have a ritual before you go up on stage, or you just grasp it and go up?
I think, okay, what's the opening? What's the opener going to be? What's the closer? What do I want to throw in that's new? And then I just kind of fill in the blanks while I'm up there. I'm usually like just bouncing around like Brock Lesnar, pacing. Yeah, it gets me pumped up. And I'm one of those people where you can come and say something to me and I'll say something back. Like, I won't yell at anybody for coming to talk to me. It's become second language now after 16 years, that it's just like, it is what it is. It's the job. You do something long enough, especially when it's something that you love. It's not really a job at that point. And then when you have enough years under your belt, you just kind of go, oh, okay, cool. Oh, there's 20 people in the crowd. Got it. There's 200 people in the crowd. Got it. It's just,
I can honestly say, as a person who's worked at the comedy club, you've always been gracious beforehand. You've always had this like, hey buddy, how you doing? Like, you're very good with the staff. You're very kind about it. You try to bring everyone together. And that's the feeling I always get from you. Like, you want everyone on the same page.
I appreciate that, because when I was drinking, it was exact opposite. I was losing bookings because nobody knew what they were booking at that point. Would you get a sober Dan showing up doing his job and then he gets drunk afterwards, or do you get a Dan that shows up drunk and makes an ass of himself?
Well, let's get into it, because that's a huge part of the story. The comedy and the alcohol seem to went hand in hand. But like you said, you were already predisposed to have alcoholism. You said before your mother passed away from it. It was already in the genetics. So let's talk about how you kind of realized it was becoming an issue. The creature Danzy was coming out, which actually, when I met you the first time, you don't know this, you were drinking.
Go ahead.
And my ex-girlfriend, who was the bartender, could not fucking stand you because of your drinking. But she used to be like, I can't stand him. But I didn't think you were that bad. I thought it was funny. I mean, but obviously the demon and the bottle was getting at you. So you were saying you were taking 2 shots maybe before you went up when you were a teenager. Did it just slowly grow and grow? Like, was alcohol and comedy hand in hand growing up in the Houston comedy area? Is that what it is like?
So I mean, I started in Beaumont, but I would go to Houston from time to time. We went everywhere, like, as a group of misfits. We'd go to Lake Charles, Louisiana. We literally would like be ready for it. Was called the Frosty Factory, and it was this drive-through daiquiri place. And that was like one of the best rooms ever. And then we'd go to the Houston Laugh Stop. The only time Houston ever saw me drunk was probably my 21st birthday. And that's when it got worse. But when I was doing shots every day, because that's the point it got to. It went to taking 2 shots before the open mic to taking 2 shots every day, and there just happens to be an open mic on a Thursday. And it was changing my behavior. I started to have a bad relationship with Slade. Slade in turn said, I can't do this anymore, man. You got to bye. But see, he didn't know I was drinking. He just thought I was being an arrogant, cocky, unappreciative little crap face, when really it was the alcohol affecting my behavior. It was a little bit of my mom dying, and then stand-up comedy giving me confidence that I hadn't had in a long time. So you mix that with drinking, and then you come off as arrogant and cocky and all that stuff.
Hey everyone, it's just Stuck jumping in to say thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you dig it, please head over to our website at improvtx.com, where you can check out our calendar for all the upcoming shows in Addison, Arlington, Houston, and San Antonio. And don't forget to follow our social media, all links in the description. And with that, back to the podcast.
So then after I got banned from Comedy Texas, I had to do open mics at like a cafe or shows in a bar. And, you know, only a handful of those comics from Comedy Texas were still talking to me. The rest, they took sides between Slade and I don't hold grudges for that or anything. And then I didn't recognize it being a problem until I got up here and the same pattern was happening where... Yes. But at the time, it was get drunk, say something stupid, and then that stupid thing goes to this person, and then everything just blows up in your face.
And you couldn't see that you were the problem. That's what a lot of alcoholics have that. Yeah. A lot of drug addicts have that, where they can't see that the problem is truly them. And like, you are the problem. Like, fix you, because there's a pattern happening here. And if the pattern over and over again is you get into a relationship and the relationship ends badly, and that person ends up married afterwards, maybe you were the problem. I had to come to that point in my life where I was like, oh, I'm the issue here. There's a common denominator, and it's me. And so it makes a difference when you see that. But when you're in it, you cannot see that. And just to illustrate how bad it was, you were banned from multiple clubs.
I was. I'm very grateful that those clubs have forgiven me and given me weekend spots. I still to this day feel like I don't deserve it, but I'm very thankful and grateful for it. But yeah, I was banned from multiple clubs because there was always a drunken incident. And it got to the point where like I recognized I had a problem, but I was so far in and self-destructive. Because again, I needed therapy at 16 years old. What I was going through was survivor's remorse and alcoholism at the same time. So when I realized that, oh yeah, I have a problem, I didn't care. It was just like I had this reckless abandonment of like, I don't care if I die from it. There's so many, there was just so many bad thoughts that I was just accepting and just didn't care. And it wasn't until almost 7 years ago that I realized I needed to stop.
Yeah, let's talk about that. The DUIs or DWIs or whatever Texas calls them. You had two of those bad boys. Woo! And the first one, I guess, is kind of debatable. From my understanding, the cop.
You have done your research, sir.
Thank you so much.
What? This is amazing. I did not tell him any of this before we started. Yeah, no, it was very debatable. Because I could have had more, but I didn't have more for a purpose. So I literally had like 3 or 4 beers. And I know people say that all the time, but that is the truth. Because I had 2 friends that were gone as soon as I got to that bar. And I was like, God, I need to be a designated driver. But I'm a stupid designated driver because I had 3 or 4 beers. But I tried to fight it because you can see in the video, if it even is still up online, I don't even know if it is, that I'm coherent. You know, I'm able to have a conversation with the cop. We proved the cop was just like, he was out of his jurisdiction. He was in town because he lived there and he was skipping out on work. We proved that cop actually got pissed. And when he got into the hallway, my witness said that he threw all the paperwork he had with him because we got him up on the stand and we made him look bad at his job.
Yeah.
However, the jury decided, because on video, I admit to having a few beers, that, yes, I was breaking the law. So it really didn't hit me. It didn't hit me at all. That was like another thing I could just go, well, that's not my fault, you know? Yeah. The second one, I don't even remember.
Yeah, that is crazy. You were blackout drunk.
Blackout drunk. So I woke up in an Austin jail with scrubs on.
With scrubs on?
See, that's what led to this thought. Oh my gosh, I've murdered someone. I was driving and I murdered someone. And I sat there for 8 hours with that thought, breaking out in tears multiple times. And we get in front of the judge and I'm handcuffed to this creepy guy, but he said, you know, Dan Danzy, DWI 2. And I went, whoa, that's it? And I immediately go, okay, this is your chance. Got to get sober. And even still, it took a long time. It took a long time to get rid of the demon. It really did.
Did you find yourself not drinking and then you would go back to it? Or were you at that point where it was like a dangerous to quit at that point?
So basically, after I'd gotten with Misty, my wife, we started living together. I got comfortable. My demon was telling me, it's okay, you're good now, you know? So I would sneak in a 6-pack of Shiner here and there. And then I went to a Houston show that I was supposed to do on November 15th. And I was drinking Shiners. And I thought I was drinking something out of a cooler. It tasted like Smirnoff. Apparently, it was like heavy alcohol. And by the time I'd gotten up there, I was gone. I was absolutely sloshed. The audience was uncomfortable. I actually got like a Facebook message.
I was gonna say you got a message from one of the people who was there.
I told them, I'm sorry, I had no idea. I'm very embarrassed.
Oh wow.
And then it wasn't just that. I embarrassed Misty in front of one of her friends who came out to the show. You know, and it was one of those things where it's like, okay, can't do this anymore. Yeah. I can't do this. So November 16th is my sobriety date. I count it when I finally said it's over.
And it's been 7 years, is that right?
It's been 7 years.
Congratulations, dude.
Thank you. Awesome. Yes. It'll be 7 years on November 16th, but we're close. Get close enough. Yeah.
And does it bother you at all anymore? Or you don't even think about it?
I don't even think about it. I don't. Now, that's not true. When Justin Thompson died, that sucked. So Justin Thompson died a month before the pandemic. Yeah. So I was trying to get out there to do comedy and just try to ignore that my best friend in comedy, a guy who basically I started with in Comedy Texas, had passed away. And then when the pandemic hit and I had to like stay inside, that's when that grief started coming. And yeah, I was really tempted because Abbott had just passed the alcohol delivery stuff. So yeah, it was tempting. And I still think this to this day. If I have another drink, it's all over.
Yeah.
I lose everything that I have built for the last 7 years, including my marriage, you know, my pop figures.
They're gone. Second thing to go. They stand up and walk out.
World title. Oh yeah. No, but like I all the clubs that have forgiven me and been gracious enough to book me and given me opportunities that, like I said, I still feel I don't deserve, that would be gone. And then they would be disappointed. A motivating factor is how many people support you in your decision and embrace the real me and was able to go, he's not like he was, you know? And when you have a good support circle and you're trying to stay sober, having a good support circle really does help. It really does.
Well, the one thing that we haven't talked about is the fact that you're hilarious and your comedy and what you do. And when you go out and you have this sense of like wanting the entire crowd to have a great time. And your comedy is nerdy. It's self-referential. You make fun of yourself. You're very self-deprecating. But
I mean, look at me. How can I not make fun of this?
Dude, it's great. And and the thing is, I want to know about your writing process, because that's something that people don't usually talk about on podcasts. And that's something a lot of people, this podcast specifically, I want to focus on that because writing is hard and everyone has a different process. What is your process of writing? Do you just sit around and wait for funny stuff to hit you and write it down? Or do you actively go out and seek it? How do you find yourself writing?
Well, I mean, in the beginning, of course, I would think of a premise and then the next day go to an open mic with just a half-written premise and then grind that open, just go to every open mic until that joke is funny or until that premise has a punchline, what have you. Now, I mean, I just think of a premise and then when I'm at a show, I kind of try things out on stage, sees what sticks, keep it, and then try to build off what sticks. Like I'm not satisfied with that one punchline. I want to build around that punchline. So I'll try it out at a show where it's full of people, right? And after I've already hit them with the stuff that works, I try something out. Oh, that punchline stuck. Boom. Like if you were putting it in a diagram, it would be a sub outlet. Like, oh, with this, I can go here or I can go this way. It's like a whole diagram of stuff. And then I just kind of throughout multiple shows decide, okay, now it's good. Now it's good. That's usually how I do it. It's the most stress-free way of doing it.
And you do a lot of crowd work. It's something I've noticed about you. You're not afraid of the audience. To the point where I saw you walk out into the audience once during a show, still killing it. It was in Arlington. I don't know if you remember this, but like you were just
because no one sat in the front row.
Yeah, and you were just like, I'm coming out here. And you were killing it the whole time. And everyone was losing it. Plus you were out like in their face. And I just remember thinking like, I've never seen this before. This is outrageous.
No one one sat in the front row, and I was mad about that. And, I always feel, your first impression of a crowd, like, and a crowd's first impression of you, or just the whole instance together. I mean, stand-up comedy is a very awkward thing. Before a joke is even told, think about it. You're just watching a person that you don't know on stage. Do you want that person to be afraid of you, or do you want that person to be like, trust me, I got this? And that thought process had occurred to me watching Dave Chappelle a lot. And you can look at Dave Chappelle now, whether you agree with him or not, and be like, he is not afraid. And that's why people are so receptive of him, because he's not afraid. Now, I don't go up on stage and say things that he says, but I value that aspect of stand-up. I value that feat, that trait. If you go up and you're nervous, the audience is going to be nervous with you. Your body language and your attitude basically determines the joke a little bit more than the punchline, to me. I've seen people with just, and I'm not going to name names, of course, but I've seen weak punchlines get big laughs, just overconfidence and charisma and all of that. Right. And that's how you got to, to me, that's how you got to do it. Now, as far as crowd work, now that my crowd work's kind of scripted, my crowd work's kind of placed. I go into a crowd to set up a bit. It's something I've been toying with for a number of years now, because I had this idea of like, why should I just limit it to just scripted jokes? Like, why can't I script everything? The way my face is when I say a punchline, to my body movement, and to even crowd work. I don't like hecklers because I can get very mean. So I try to de-escalate it quickly and move on. And so far it's working. Also, they can't tell, but I'm like 5'6" and 100. And yeah. So getting beat up would be very easy.
You've got a big personality for your size. And that's what I was going to ask you. Do you feel like you have a comedy persona, or do you feel like you're yourself on stage?
I feel like I'm myself. I feel like I'm myself. A more animated version of myself. And that is because I feel like you got to be really animated, because if you just stand there and talk like I'm talking right now to you, it's just like, this isn't a TED talk. Make us some jokes. So I am myself. I am absolutely myself. And that takes a lot of stage time to get that comfortable.
When do you think you got there? At the 5-year mark, the 10-year mark? Where do you think you were?
When I quit drinking, because when you drink, it gives you that confidence and everything. But when I quit, I mean, I was already like 10 years in the game. Other than a handful of times where I was plastered on stage, for the most part, I stayed relatively sober. And I was able to learn from there. But as soon as it got to this point where it's like you need to prove to everybody that you're not a drunk and that you were good at this the whole time, kind of like not a chip on my shoulder against anyone else, a chip on my shoulder against me. I had that mindset immediately, and that just made the wheels turn, And I guess the first time I went up on a Hyenas weekend, for the first time in a long time, that's where I was like, I got this. Yeah, I'm sober, but I can do, just let's go. Let's do this.
When you reach the level of headliner, how did that feel? And like, what was that first time headlining a show?
When was that first time? I don't even remember. I'd headline shows when I was drinking, bar shows. I guess do they count? I don't know.
That's the great debate. Do they count or not? I don't know.
I don't know. It's more on the booker if they were booking me to headline at that time. I don't know. I don't necessarily. I mean, I had the time. I think that would be the only thing to be nervous about. I had the time. I did have to learn the check drop sober. I did have to learn that.
It's weird how the room falls at that point, and the atmosphere becomes very different. But when people see those checks and they are cranked up to the nines, they get very quiet. And so,
because they're paying attention to what their bill is, how much they're going to tip, and you have that couple that's 2 people at a table. So the husband or the wife, whatever. It's 2022. Anyone can pay. The spouse is like looking over at the check and they're having a conversation. I don't know if what I do now is the correct thing. My thing is, okay, I'll go to a low energy bit because they're low energy right now. And then when I see that, things are starting to pick up through the laughter, I'll go back into my high energy bits. I think that's the right way to do it.
I think you're right. From my 8 years of experience, the only thing you can do wrong is mention the check drop. That is the devil's kiss. Do not mention it. Do not bring attention to it, because all you're doing is shitting on the club, because the club needs to make their money too. And so that's my personal opinion. Whenever
I agree with that.
Like, just don't do that. Let's talk about your replacement, or not your replacement, but like, you had alcoholism. That was kind of the thing that you were doing. But then Twitch streaming seems to have become catharsis.
You know about my Twitch stream? No, I'm kidding.
I think everyone does, man.
My Twitch stream is such a secret. No, I'm kidding.
No. With your Twitch streaming, it feels like that kind of became your hobby and kind of your therapy, because I know you were on a 12-step program at some point, but it didn't really work for you. And so you stepped away from it. And so did that become kind of like the therapy that you needed, being able to spend time with the games and the people online? Because I know you made friends through Twitch.
I have. So the Twitch thing started because I was tired of not being able to get any sleep. I needed to do something with the hours that I was awake. And like 4 years ago at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was like, I'm going to stream Final Fantasy VII.
Boom.
One of my favorite games. What I didn't know is that people, and this was before Twitch had just launched. This is when you could go to Twitch and everyone was gaming. There wasn't hot tubs. There wasn't ASMR. There wasn't podcast. I'm not putting podcasts in the category of those two.
Hey, you do a podcast.
I'm not. I know. But there was nothing like that on Twitch. It was literally just games. I didn't know that Final Fantasy VII still had a huge impact on people like it did me. And so I went like 2 weeks straight playing Final Fantasy VII with these people from the UK coming in at 4 o'clock in the morning, because it's like 10 o'clock in the morning for them, you know? It's bright out, you know? And just the people I've met since then. I know Brits that they have a guest room available for Misty and I, people in Canada, the Netherlands, and then people in the United States too, in Kansas and stuff. And now these people have just become like family. And I don't have a biggest community, but I got a tiny little group of people, and yeah, it really helped. It really did. It helped with not only sobriety, but it helped with my confidence in entertaining strangers. Because I didn't think me playing video games was entertaining at all.
No, you have a personality and you have a presence for it, dude, and that's what it takes. That. And your channel, which all good channels have, is they have their own vibe, and your vibe is just like, come in, let's have fun. Let's play some games. I love Nerd Alert, the podcast.
Thank you.
With your wife, Misty. It's freaking awesome. Like, anytime you go live and I catch it, I try to pop in because I enjoy your perspective on stuff. Because you often have, how do I say this, an extreme perspective on stuff, and it's fun as hell to listen to, and it's just so great. So
I do be going wild sometimes. Like there'll be times when we stop and when we're done with the show, I'm like, did I really say that? Oh, dude. Man, I play too much.
No, it's fun.
No, and I love doing that. I love doing that with Misty. And I've kind of brought her into nerd culture and the nerd world. I mean, she was a nerd at heart. She just wasn't watching it. When I met her, like, her television was outdated. She didn't have streaming services. Like, I brought this world into her. I was like, hey, look, here's Daredevil. And she was hooked on the MCU. Nice. Hey, here's professional wrestling, and she's hooked on professional. Here's Doctor Who. I was just introducing her to a lot of stuff. Now, a lot of stuff she doesn't like that I watch, you know, but for the most part, we do watch the same things. And she's now a Marvel DC expert, and she knows her wrestling and stuff like that. And it's one of the best things to do every week is just to sit down with her and talk nerd stuff with our Twitch friends, because she's got opinions too, and she doesn't know it, but I think she's funnier than me sometimes. Well, most of the time she's funnier than me. She really is. She makes me laugh harder than anyone.
I know, and you can tell that you dig your wife. That's the other thing, is like, you two are in a partnership. You're probably best friends, would be my guess.
Yeah.
And you guys just have a blast. So, but also speaking, you brought up wrestling. You have another podcast that is doing very well, the Counting Lights podcast with Chris Germany as your co-host. He was a professional wrestler for a long time, and he's a comedian. I love him. He's freaking awesome. He's so nice too.
He's been working out too. I don't know if you've seen him lately.
No, I haven't seen him, dude, but it wouldn't take much because he was already stocky and built like a son of a gun.
Well, now, I mean, so I got COVID, and then he went to Clearwater, Florida for vacation. We hadn't seen each other for like 3 or 4 weeks. He shows up to record the podcast. I'm like, are you setting up for one more match, buddy? And yeah, Chris Germany is I'm so glad I met him. He has opened doors for me in the wrestling community, in the wrestling world, that if I told my 8-year-old self this was going to happen, like I couldn't. There's so much off the bucket list because of him, and I owe that man my life, my time, all of that. Like, if he wants to do something with Counting Lights, I'm all for it. It's whatever. Counting Lights is all him. I want to put that out there right there. That is all him. All I do is I'm just that extra voice, and I edit it and I put it up. But it is Chris Germany's podcast that he has given me the privilege to be a part of.
It's crazy too, because you guys get the coolest guest on, but you get so many legends of wrestling, whether they be from major wrestling outlets or whether it just be
Hall of
independent
Famers.
Wrestling. Yeah, it's nuts, dude.
You want to hear a crazy thing that happened because of that podcast? So we interviewed Jeff Jarrett, right? For those of you who don't know, Jeff Jarrett, 3rd generation wrestler. He put China on the map, basically. He's the one that lost to China, I think, for the Intercontinental title or something. I feel like that's correct. But anyway, major figure in 90s wrestling. A month later, I go to WrestleMania. I have a floor seat that I was offered at a cheap price. I'm like, I'm going to take this. And it was in Cowboy Stadium. And our concession from my section was the DraftKings lobby, right? If you're watching a Cowboy game, it's connected to the locker room, and then there's the lounge, and that's where the Cowboys come out. But it was my concession and bathroom. So I'm like, hey, this is pretty nice and snazzy, you know? As I'm walking in and pulling the door open, there's Jeff Jarrett. And we just have this moment of like, small world. And he's like, what's up, Dan? And it was just like, and when you're around wrestlers, if you're a wrestling fan, you got to keep that fanboy stuff.
Oh, yeah?
You know? Yeah,
you don't bring that out at all?
Because there are wrestling fans that go overboard and they've ruined that experience. You know what I mean? Like stalkers and what have you. So I keep it, and Chris taught me that, keep it low. So I was just like, oh man, it's fancy seeing you here. And we talked for a little bit, and then that's when fans around us started to see him and were shouting at him. I was like, Jeff, you need to go wherever you need to go, bro. It's good seeing you.
Support the podcast. Let them know what it is.
After we interviewed him, he's such a nice guy. He mentioned Chris on his podcast, My World, which gets way more listeners than ours. And I think he did mention Counting Lights podcast, and he did help our podcast a little just by mentioning. But that's just like, this was one of the things Chris Germany has provided for me. Like, hey, here you go. And my first thought when I sat back down at WrestleMania was, no one's going to believe me. But I texted Chris, and he was so happy I had that experience. And he'll say stuff like all the time, like, I'm so happy like wrestlers are befriending you and getting to know you and trust you. It makes me happy. The man is just genuinely happy for his friends. And I mean, when you meet somebody like that, it's nice to meet somebody like that in this world these days and age where everyone argues with each other. And so, you know, he's a great human being.
Do you also moonlight as a commentator on wrestling events? Is that right?
Okay, so I did it once. I'm going to do it again. We've just we're trying to find another venue for Counting. We're like accidentally starting a wrestling company at this point. We want to move into. We never meant to. We just wanted to do comedy shows and wrestling shows. Chris knows how to run wrestling shows. I know how to run comedy shows. Boom.
Yeah.
The wrestling shows got so popular, it was just like, we need a bigger venue. So we're shopping for that right now. we did one of our wrestling shows on Fight TV, and I got to commentate, and I learned some stuff with that, but I got a lot of good feedback. So I was just like, yeah, this is something I could do in the future the next time I have the opportunity. It's really fun. I reckon if you ever have a chance to be just a wrestling color commentator, do it, because it's literally just, and being a heel bad guy commentator is so easy. Just root for the bad guy and say outlandish stuff that isn't true. Like I said, me and Rodney Mack were homies, and we go to Bed Bath and Beyond together. It was just stupid, but so fun. And I was bragging about my Paul Jones sweater. If you go and look for Paul Jones sweaters, they're like $20. It's not even a thing. It's just that type of behavior, and it's so fun to do. Yeah. I'm amazed, Ducky. This is amazing that you know all of this. I'm completely thrown off.
So my one last thing I want to ask you before I let you go, and I appreciate your time, and I really do. This has been awesome. What is your advice for up and comers, for people like me who have just started? I'm only like 6 months, 8 months in. You know what I mean?
Dude, I'm going to tell you what Patton Oswalt told me when I was 5 weeks in. I went to go see, I think it was the Werewolves and Lollipops recording at Cap City Comedy Club in Austin, Texas.
So you're on that recording?
Laughing? No, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I've never really listened for my laughter, because that was I know the shows were packed, all 4 of them. Mine was packed. My dad heckled the feature. That was weird. That was such a bad night. But yeah, I got to talk with Patton after the show, and I was like, do you have any advice? Hit the stage as much as you can. And really, when you're 6 months in, that's the only thing you can do. Be true to yourself, and, have integrity, have dignity. Don't be quiet and let people walk all over you and stuff. Like, value yourself as a person. A lot of people in comedy swallow a lot of crap just to get a gig. And it doesn't have to be like that at all. I mean, now more than ever, I feel that comedy is everywhere now. You can start a stage at a library. You can start a show. Just be genuine to yourself, and, don't think about success or fame. Just think about that next joke. Think about that new joke. And as far as because a lot of people, they don't get what they want, which is success or fame, and they quit. I'm telling you, it's 16 years. I have 1 TV credit, maybe. I don't even use it anymore because it's so old. But for 16 years, all I ever wanted to do was just this art form. I don't want a Netflix special. I don't want to work the road every weekend. I work my own schedule, there is no wrong way. There's only the way that makes you happy. And don't let others tell you oh, you're doing it the wrong way. Well, no, my goal is just to live comfortably, have a house for me and my wife. And, if every once in a while someone wants me to get on stage and tell jokes, okay, I'll go tell jokes. I'm not expecting someone to be in the crowd and they got a TV deal with, hey, you want to be on Colbert? No.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome.
And stay sober. Stay sober.
Yeah. I was going to say, this advice is coming from the person who made all the mistakes over and over again and got forgiveness and found that second chance.
And that's the thing, man. And, I'm sure there are people right now that have made mistakes, and they are in the same position I was in. A lot of it is being self-aware as well. Put yourself in other people's shoes. Someone bans you, put yourself in their shoes. Look at yourself from their point of view. Time heals everything. And I'm a great example of that. But in order for time to heal, you got to heal yourself. Yeah. That's as simple as that gets. And you got to be honest with yourself, too. I had to be dead honest with myself over the clubs that have banned me. I had to drop that, oh, everyone's against me. It's all them. I had to drop that. And I went, no, you got drunk, said some stuff you shouldn't have said because you were drunk. And then this was the consequence of that. And that's why this happened to you. So you got to apologize to who you got to apologize to, which is the 8th step. And you just got to be better, be a better person, be somebody you would look up to.
That's awesome that you came that far in your journey and you realized that. And thank God you did too before something bad happened.
I'm very thankful I did not go through the detoxing, what's it called? The DTs? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I didn't go through severe alcohol withdrawal, and I was very, very lucky. It was like a cloud hanging over my head in my first couple of months sober. Like, when's this gonna happen? But really all it was just like, I would just be staying up late. But then that started Twitch, and I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason. I couldn't tell you if it's God. I couldn't tell you if it's the universe. I'm too small-minded to grasp whatever this is. The only thing I know that's real is me and how I interact with the environment around me. And I'm very lucky because, like, also throughout this journey, I've met our buddy Jake, our buddy, all these mutual friends that we have that I love and that I cherish. I love having that. I love that comedy gave me you guys. Yeah. And I love that more. Like, if a Netflix deal came to me tomorrow, I'd still be like, yeah, but the best thing about my life is the friends I've made. You know,
dude, I agree with you 100%. That's, for me, the podcasting network has been that. It has been the friends along the way. Plus, it gives us something to do that's productive and it's fun. I got one more question for you. Why the moniker? Why the stage name? I outed you. Oh yeah.
Okay. I'm very open with this because people will come up to me and go, "Is that a stage name?" Well, yeah, but it's really not. So Dan is short for Daniel, which is my middle name. But I was called Daniel or Dan my whole life because my parents named me Mark with a C. And Danzy's my mom's maiden name. Okay. And my mom had lost her two older brothers when she was a baby. One to cancer, one got hit by a car. There was nothing left of that family name. And I wanted to carry that with me.
That is awesome, dude.
Like, I'm not to this day, I'm not too happy with my mom. I will admit that there are times where I'm like really upset, especially like when I have a really big opportunity, I'm upset that she's not around, but I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my parents and stuff. And I just couldn't let that name just die. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Dan Danzy is actually, I should get it legally changed, but then I don't want to upset my dad with my real last name.
I understand. I'm David Jr. basically, but I go by Duck. So you're just a certain name. And so I've always laughed because it's such a great name. It's got that rhyme to it. And, whenever somebody told me, like, that's not his real name, I was like, what? I was like, God, what? I was like, but it is kind of is, though, now that you put it out on
you put your trust in people and they say, don't worry, I'm not going to tell anybody. No, but I'm more open about it now because as I've gotten older, I realize it's really dumb to hide my real name, especially for tax purposes. So yeah, everybody's like, that's your stage name, right? Yeah. What's your real name? I mean, I'll tell someone in private conversation because I'm a very private guy. So if I trust the person, I'll tell them my actual name. But again, and this is another thing, comedy, you never know what other comedians are like off stage. Like, and maybe that's just me being anxious with people and not trusting people a lot. But, when I trust someone, it's like, hey, by the way, my real name is Joey. So there
it is. Joey Johnson. That's what it is.
It's Mark Markison. That is what it is.
Easy squeezy. Well, dude, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining me on this first episode. It has been awesome to talk to you. We got so much stuff out there. It is great. Check them out. DanDanzy.com, Instagram, Danzyland, Facebook.com/Dan Danzy, Twitter, Dan Danzy, and Twitch TV /Red Nebula Pictures. Go watch the streams, join in, have fun.
I'm gonna say something before. Don't hit stop.
Okay.
I want this. I am amazed at how much info you had and all the research you did, and you plugged all my social media stuff. I didn't have to. Yeah. I've done a lot of podcasts, and it takes longer than this because the host of the podcast doesn't actually know anything about me. And it was very comfortable being here with you. And yeah, thank you for doing your research, man. Like, that's amazing to me. You're a great podcaster and a great interviewer. You're Barbara Walters in here. I'm amazed. You're Larry King.
Well, dude, I gotta go. I gotta get ready for work.
Go to
Thank
work.
you so
Tell them
much.
if you're late. Tell them Danzy held you up, and they'll all get it.
All right, cool. All right, later, dude. Thank
you, man.
And there it is. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. If you enjoyed it, please head over to improvtx.com to check out all our upcoming shows at the Addison, Arlington, Houston, and San Antonio clubs. If you like this podcast, you might enjoy the other podcasts on the Improv TX Comedy Network. We have The Act Out. From open mics to the big stage, comedians tell us the story they've made, where I talk to comedians from all over and chat about their journey this far. Also, check out the Black Dog Retro Arcade podcast. Straight from the arcade, we talk about how our favorite games were made. That's right, we're talking all that video game goodness. And finally, we have Quacking Up, a storytelling podcast where we pick suggestions from a hat and tell stories based upon them. Once again, thank you so much for listening. Please check out our social media, all links in the description. And with that, we'll see you on the next one.